Hello everybody, this is Connor with Shopscape Lawn and Landscape here again for another video. So I want to share with you guys how I just landed a $9,000 landscape rip out and install, and what it entails and how I worked my way up to selling a job of this size. So I'll give you guys a quick background of how I started in business and how I've gotten my business to this point. And I'll make it as quick as I can without rambling. So I started cutting grass at about 10 years old, and I did a lot of maintenance, and we still do. We still do a ton of maintenance. In the spring, we probably moved, and I don't know the exact number, but we probably moved at least 200 yards of mulch this year, minimum, likely more. And just to give you guys some info, we charge about $150 per yard of mulch, or that's pretty much exactly what we charge. Sometimes it'll be a little bit more, a little bit less, but that's pretty much what we charge. I do like to check in with the customer how much they actually want. Sometimes customers don't mind us just going thin, they just want a light coat, and other times they want the full 2 inches. Anything more than that, I really try to push them the 2 inches or less, because anything over 2 inches, you start burying plants and things like that, and that's just not good at all. You can start having a lot of issues with that, and it's just not good. You don't want to pile mulch around trees. You also don't want to have a divot. I've seen people do that where they have like those tree rings in front of their house and there's like a divot like this. But anyway, I've been doing this for quite a long time. I'm 21. I've been doing this since I was 10, so it's taken quite a while to get to this point. And I'm not saying you can't get there quicker, but let me do a breakdown of how in the last few years I've gotten to this point. So started off with maintenance, slowly raised up our minimum price. At this point in the summer, because we're a little bit slower and I am solo, I'm able to do even a $200 job, especially if we're already in the neighborhood mowing. And I keep all my stuff really tight. So just to be completely transparent with you guys, for me, I want to make at least $85 an hour doing maintenance. I don't care if it's weeding or anything like that. Usually I'm shooting for 100. That may sound high, it may sound low. We are definitely one of the higher priced landscapers in the area, for sure, because we do phenomenal work. We are very communication focused, and we care, you know, and I want to and need to make a certain amount of money, and that's just what it is. Occasionally I'll underbid a job. With landscape, I do shoot for a little bit higher of a price, and that's before materials and all that kind of stuff. But at least $100 an hour for landscape installs rip out. I shoot for at least a 50% profit margin. It does depend on the cost of materials. Sometimes materials are super expensive, and adding 50% on that might be just totally out of line. But typically it's 50% plus, and there's different ways to calculate things. But essentially, how I got up to this point was doing smaller jobs, like ripping out bushes, trimming stuff, planting, installing decorative stone, smaller weed barrier fabric jobs. And essentially what this big job is just a bunch of smaller jobs combined into one. I also learned how to run machines doing different types of projects, so I know how to run a mini skid, which is something I'm going to need for this project. And in general, for me, unless you have an excess of labor, and guys, you're trying to keep busy, for me being solo, it 100% makes more sense to go rent the machine and not do it all by hand. It makes way more sense to do it that way, especially because we have a mow route that we have to get to, and I want to knock this job out as fast as possible. So it makes sense for me to go and rent the machine, and that is all worked up worked into the quote. So essentially what you guys are going to do is first you might do a $50 job, then a $100 job, then a $500 job, then a $250 job. It's going to go up and down, and then eventually you're going to work your way up to $1,000, $2,000, $1,500, $3,000 maintenance jobs, at least in my area, and pricing can be different all over the place. We're definitely a higher income area. In terms of counties across the United States, it's actually number one is Orange County, California. I'm here in Michigan. I'm in Oakland County. Oakland County is number 2 in the United States. So there's a lot of money over here. And people that are considered middle class here would probably be considered rich in other areas. So we shoot for upper middle class customers. I don't like super rich customers. They are picky. They tend to be a pain in the ass, and they are not our ideal client. I let this thing die. This is not weed, by the way. This is a cigar, and you do not, this stuff is just no good, guys, but I don't know, it's just what I do occasionally. So if you haven't tried nicotine, I don't recommend it. It is extremely hard to quit. But essentially, we don't like to work for super rich people. I'm not a fan of that. I like to work for upper middle class people. And we are in a heavily populated area as well. We have big lawns, we have small lawns, we have all types of lawns, all types of properties. If you have a property that's bigger and is going to require more travel time, like let's say you're doing a mulch job or a landscape rip out, tear out, and there's a lot of travel time in between spots. It's not a small property, it's a big property. You need to figure that into your quote in terms of adding more hours onto how long it's going to take you, because it is going to take you longer. And how do you figure out how to quote this stuff, guys? You figure it out by doing it over and over again, learning as much as you can about what expenses are like for other companies, what their pricing is, just to get an idea. It is definitely helpful to know those things. I'm not saying you want to copy their prices, but you do have to do what you got to do to get into it. And especially on smaller jobs, you're not going to lose your butt as much, especially if you're a small company, you don't have a lot of overhead. But you do want to charge, even in the beginning, as if you are a bigger company. That is what I recommend, because what it will do is it will allow you to grow into those prices, and you will still be able to make money. So essentially how I break it down for this $9,000 job, I'm not going to break it down exactly. I don't have any numbers in front of me, but what I'll do is time, so how long it's going to take me, times my hourly rate that I want to make. If I have employees there, I would put an hourly rate on them as well. Then I have materials that is on top of the hourly rate. So let's say, I'm not going to use the $9,000 job example, but I'm going to use an example of let's say a landscape rip out install. And don't put too much faith in these numbers, but I'm just going to make it simple. So let's say it's going to take 20 hours. So it's going to take 2 days if you work a 10-hour day, and it's just you on the property. So that's $100 an hour. So $1,000 per day right away. Then you have to figure in your materials. Either you can figure in time to go get materials into that hourly rate. That's usually how I like to do it. Or you can figure that in with the material pricing. So if the materials are costing you, let's say $50 a plant, maybe you charge $100 a plant because you have to go get it. I prefer to break it down as an hourly and then mark up the materials very slightly. And that's just kind of how we do things. But I want to get paid for my time to go get those materials. And especially when you're solo, you have to make money. Just because you're going out and doing traveling, I don't think that means you should get a lesser hourly rate, because you have to do these things. Or you can pay for delivery and things like that, and that would be figured in. So essentially, you got your hours on the job, you got materials, you got your equipment cost, and then you can either figure this into the hourly rate, or you could add it on top of the hourly rate if you want to make a certain amount of money. So Then you have your fixed expenses or variable expenses that are going to go into the job. So you have gas, you have insurance for your vehicles, you have your marketing overhead across all these jobs that you're getting. You have the time to make sales. You might have to bid. If you're a company that bids high, you might have to bid out. You might have to bid out 3 jobs in order to sell. In order to sell 1 job. Usually you want to shoot for a 50% close rate. I don't totally believe in that. Our close rate's probably lower than that. In fact, it's definitely lower than that. And I like to keep it that way because I prefer to get paid more money for my time, and I prefer to find customers that are the perfect fit. And typically we try to qualify people over the phone. You definitely don't want to do that if you're first starting. You want to, get experience and go out and do things. And if you have to do it a little bit cheaper, I totally get that. But at the same time, you want to keep your prices at least around where everyone else is at. If you're coming in at some ridiculously low price, you're just screwing yourself is really what you're doing. And you're going to spin your wheels possibly for years and make no money. And you'd really just be better off going and working at McDonald's. You'd be able to save more money. So you don't want to do that. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but with all the information on the internet and with AI and that kind of thing, there's really no reason to be doing that. So essentially, with a job, you break it down with these overhead costs. You say, how do I break that down? Well, for a truck, you're going to charge for your trucks and your machines on the job as well, on top of everything. So if you have a truck, you can break it down in a couple ways. If you have a truck payment, let's say it's $400 a month, you work 5 days a week, you divide that by 20 days, and then what would that be? Don't quote me on this, guys. $20 a day. So you figure that into your price. That's part of your day rate. And then you could divide it by, if you work 10 hours in a day and you work 50 hours a week, you could divide that by 10. And then you get your, what is that? $2 an hour? I don't know. I might have messed this up, guys, but I think it's $2 an hour. So you add that into your hourly rate or on your overhead on top. There are a lot of different ways to break things down. And let me make this a little more clear, because I know I'm kind of talking in circles and this might get confusing, and I'm not going to make the video much longer than this, but let me break it down one more time. This is the way I like to do it. So I want to personally make $100 an hour. That is what I'm quote unquote paying myself. The way I pay myself is currently by distribution. I have an LLC. Do I recommend doing that? No. How I will be doing things next year is I will be filing as an S Corp, because we make a decent amount of money, and I will be paying myself on payroll, which will change the way I break down quotes. But I'm just gonna keep it simple and tell you guys exactly how I do it. So I'm charging $100 an hour for my labor. I'm charging materials on top of that. That hourly rate includes going and getting materials. I am charging a tiny markup on materials. I am charging the day rate to rent a machine. I'm charging in that hourly rate. If it's going to take me an hour to go get that machine, that's $100. And then I might mark up a tiny bit on the price of the machine. Probably not. I just tend to round numbers up to make things simple and kind of cover CYA, cover your ass if something goes wrong. Then you have your regular overhead. So some of it's variable cost, some of it will be fixed costs. You can have a fixed cost for your truck. So I was talking about that $2 for a truck payment. Maybe you don't have a truck payment. Maybe your trucks are paid off. Okay, so that's my situation. So I'm gonna be using one truck on this job. It is let's say a $20,000 truck. It's gonna last me 5 years because I plow snow. Maybe we'll figure in 7 to 8 years, because for what I'm using it for, I'm getting snow removal money out of it. So I'm not gonna charge them for that divided by 5 years. I'm going to divide it by 7 instead, because it would last longer, right? So, and I'm going to get paid during snow removal for having that truck. So I know that might sound kind of confusing, but again, over time, you start to learn these things. It does take time. So the $2 that it's costing me a truck payment, I also am gonna have to do maintenance on that truck. If it's covered under warranty, that's one thing, but eventually it's not gonna be. So let's just say I have a $20,000 truck. I'm gonna change it up and it's paid for, but I'm gonna break it down by 7 years. And then, 50 hours a week divided by 30 weeks in a year that we work. And then you get a rate, right? Let's just say, this is not the correct math, but let's say it's $50 a day that the truck's gonna cost me. That could totally be wrong, but let's just say $50 a day. On top of that, I'm gonna have to do maintenance on that truck. Let's say, well, last year I spent $5,000 maintaining my truck, getting stuff fixed. So I'm gonna break down $5,000 by 30 weeks, by 50 hours a week, and then I'm gonna get a number. So I'm adding that into my overhead. I have the cost of gas. If you have employees on the job, you have the cost of labor. And it varies. But essentially, what you guys want to figure out is how much money you actually want to make. You might want to make $200 a day profit. You might want to pay yourself 100 of that, so you have 100 left over. And keep in mind, guys, you are going to pay about 30%, and I'm not your tax accountant. Damn, this thing died again. You're going to pay about 30% in taxes. So if you make 100 grand in a year, you're going to really, after taxes, if you don't spend any of the money and write anything off, then you're going to pay about, or you're going to make about $66,000 or what is $70,000. You're going to make somewhere around that, maybe less, maybe more, depending on your tax rate, how much money you're making. I don't have an exact rate. I usually just figure it in at 30%. That's just how I do things. So if I am making $100 an hour, I take a personal salary out of it. Essentially, guys, you got to do a lot of math, and ChatGPT can help you with this, but I just want to give you a little bit of a breakdown. I'm sorry if this video was confusing. I hope this was helpful to at least some of you, because videos like this were extremely helpful to me when I was working on landing bigger jobs. And essentially, you just work your way up to it, and you have good marketing, and you also start to market those specific services. So instead of marketing yourself as a maintenance company, if you want to do more landscape jobs, you market yourself as a lawn and landscape company. So those are just the basics. I hope this video was helpful. And if you guys have any questions for me, you can either DM me on Instagram at Shopscape, or you can leave a comment down below and I will make sure to reply with you within a timely manner as much as I can. I am very busy. So I hope you guys appreciate me taking the time to make this video, and I apologize for the cigar. I don't like showing this kind of stuff, but I'm trying to multitask and do two things at once because I gotta get back to work. So anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, stay healthy, stay away from stuff like this if you can. And yeah, have a blessed day. All right. Thanks, guys.